Hey everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus with another Modern Burn video. So a couple things have happened in recent days with the Modern format. First off, Oko, Mox Opal, and Lattice have been banned, so the format's opened back up. Second off, yeah, haven't been doing a ton of burn lately. So in addition to doing Chunky Red this week, I'm going to be working on some burn videos. Been a while. Could go back to traditional Boros. It's probably a decent chance that Boros is in a good position in the format, but we're going to revisit the deck that was my lone 5-0 for the last quarter of MTGO, and that was the red late slate blue slash burn deck that Burke over on the Burn Discord had created and gone to a 3-2 finish in a modern preliminary event. Before we go any further, I want to give a quick shout out to our newest Patreon member, Adrian Gallardo. I hope I pronounced that correct. Adrian, thanks very much for your support. If you'd like to help support the channel and our mission of both doing a bunch of burn content and doing 50 decks in 50 weeks, which is trying to fill out the formats as they go, with Modern and Pioneer alternating weeks of what deck we're focusing on. This current week, we're focusing on Chunky Red and Pioneer. Last week we did Urza Oko before the bannings, so been doing the top decks in each format so far to pretty good results so far. But that said, let's get back into this deck tech. The one thing that really impressed me about this deck was its ability to handle Eldrazi Tron and the power of counterspells out of the sideboard of a burn deck. To that end, the main thing this deck is, it's basically a mono red deck splashing off in the main deck and counterspells in the sideboard. So you got a whole lot of mono red burn stuff. You've got 4 skull cracks in the main because life gain's a thing. Beyond that, you're packing the usuals: lava spikes, lightning bolts, searing blazes, skull cracks, roof bolts, skewer the critics, 4 monster Swiss spear, 4 goblin god, 4 eidolon. 1 grim flare here. I wasn't too pleased with it in that last league, but I think the format could be shifting, obviously, and it's possible you'll see things like elves, humans, etc. come back and forth, and it's nice to have a little bit of interaction in that regard. From the sideboard we had previously run, there was a couple Phyrexian Revokers, 3 Mystical Disputes, 4 Smash to Smithereens. With the banning of both Oko and Lattice, I don't see, or Oko, Opal, and Lattice, I don't really see a ton of artifact decks likely floating around, so we're including a couple Smash to Smithereens here just in case we run into Etron and get Chaliced. Beyond that, 4 Ceremonious Rejection. This card is exclusively for Eldrazi Tron, which is probably the strongest remaining deck of the decks that hit by the bans. So a deck that was consistently running second or third behind the Urza Oko variants, and even right before Urza Oko was printed and we were going Stoneforge Mystics and stuff, Etron was a deck that was performing well at the time. The other slot that we're using is 4 copies of Mystical Dispute. Now, I'm 100% this is the wrong counterspell. The thing is, without playing in the meta, I'm not sure what card we're supposed to be running on the slot. Is it Spell Pierce? Is it Mana Leak? Is it Mystical Dispute? Is it Disdainful Stroke? Because there's a lot of decks that got hit by the ban. Like the Amulet Field decks were running Oko. Obviously all the Oko and Urza decks took a huge hit. So I'm not quite sure if we're supposed to be running, like, in this type of show, if we're supposed to be running Mana Leak, what kind of counterspell. So until the format kind of shapes out, I'm going to be playing bad Mana Leak, good in blue mirror, good against blue decks, counterspell. So, helps us in the control matchups, might help us stop the Stoneforge Mystic decks if they make a huge thing, the blue-white snow decks, if they happen to continue to run the green splash for like Icefang Coatl and stuff. I was even seeing that before Oko was printed, like they were running like Icefang Coatl, Arkham's Astrolabe, and such. So having that counterspell in those matchups be basically 1 mana or 1 blue mana, 3 mana leak is pretty nice. So once again, not sure if this shell will even be good moving forward, but that's the main things. Also bringing back Graveyard Hate to the party, because both Crabvine and Dredge are still a thing. They obviously didn't get hit by the new bans, and once again, second copy of Grim here, just because I expect the tribal decks to make a resurgence here in the new meta. So let's fire up a league and see what we run into. Starting out with play, which obviously has a huge burn for burn and red aggressive decks in general. This hand's a bit on the slow side. Not having a 1-drop creature, obviously a bit of a bummer, but without going to the 12 1-drops, I think it's a little bit harder to facilitate that. So suspend Revolt and pass. Play Eidolon on 2 and hope this is good enough in whatever matchup we happen to be in. Once Upon a Tizzle. So are we up against Eidolon deck, or not Eidolon, Amulet? Stomping Ground. So Ponza, possibly? Yeah, it feels like Ponza. Holding on to our fetch land because wow, they kept a 1-lander? No, they have Stomping Ground hand, right? Yep. Bolt. Certainly have Engrais of the Gods. To 11 here. So do this. Hold up Bolt here. Interesting to see what they have. Hopefully they don't have Baluth. Alright, so they have alright, so traditional burn game plan, pretty good that game. So none of our sideboard cards are particularly impactful here. Realistically, Ponza could bring in something like Trinisphere, so Smash could be something you're interested in. They were also running a Karn package in some of the variants, so once again, Smash is a consideration. Searing Blood can potentially hit their dorks, as well as things like Bloodbraid Elf and some smaller creatures, so it should be pull up some Ponza. But most of the lists have actually kind of gone away from mid-range, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, most of the good lists have gone to like a run-in 6 kind of Tarmogoyf mid-range package. So, curious what I'm actually supposed to bring in here. Could bring in Dispute, but I think Dispute's going to be better on the draw, if at all. I think we just bring in these two and maybe go down a Grim Boy and a Eidolon on the draw. Just because one of the things they're likely to have to bring in is more additional removal. This hand's painful, but pressure. So definitely something you want in the matchup. Without access to a Skullcrack in this hand, it does have its issues. And that's only the 6, but keeps their 6-card hand. So they're a deck that is definitely beneficial from Once Upon a Tizzle into Topia Sprawl. Alright. So we're going to be taking a lot of damage from our lands. Let's hope they don't have anything major here. So, sure. That does make our job considerably more difficult. Alright, so suspend the Rift Bolt. And I guess hold up a Lightning Bolt here. It'll be kind of hard to burn them out against, especially if they have Spellbreaker. Sure. Could have bolted there, not particularly relevant. Gonna 2-for-1 ourselves to not 2-for-1 ourselves, if that makes sense. This is where not having things like Roast in your deck's a little bit awkward. Also strikes me as they don't have a Baloth in their hand, which is nice. So we're only one bolt away. Never mind. So they have 2 cards in the graveyard. If they are smart, they just eat this now, y'all. Okay. Here's a skill crack. So let us do the thing. Hold up a skill crack. Put you to 8. Now there is some amount of draws that are clearly lethal here. That, however, is not one of them. So go to 7 and I die. Bolt this, live another turn. Then give him another fodder for his or her scavenging ooze. So I guess we bolt this, bolt their face. Willingly go to dead to a Bloodbird Elf. Pass the turn, plan on popping a land. Yep, going to, yeah, sure. Still dead to another bolt of 2 bolt effects, I guess. So if I hit spell, it's not a creature, we might have a chance. And if they don't have lightning bolt. Do you have bolt? Oh, sweet. Alright, well, Searing Blaze and lightning bolt got there. Lightning bolt. Alright, so our opponent wasn't showing us any of their lovely bunch of coconuts. They weren't showing us any of our lovely land destruction spells. So, am I supposed to assume that they boarded them out? It's possible. If that's the case, I might want to bring in these mystical disputes, especially on the play. 3 Eidolons seem fine, Searing Blaze and some numbers seem fine. Shaven out. Guess I'd love to play first. This hand is good, but not great. Second land would be fantastic, obviously. I kept 7, which is notable. The Glory Dagger, alright. Let's pawn a Tizzle. No deck, give me a land. Land would be wonderful. Seasoned Pyro. Okay. Always got the sprawling, don't you, Red? I mean, stomping ground and land. Cool. Awkward. So we hope you don't have anything fun here. You're getting like a billion lands. Yeah, there's a Bailoff. Cool. Hey, just what we wanted, right? Go ahead and do the thing, because we're getting Glory Bang no matter what we do next turn. So. Wow. Whose side are you guys on, anyway? Oh, sure. Hmm. Since an attacking here, and Glory Burner for the coup de grace. Or just have all white brand keep for sure. Well, that was fun. So, yeah, that kind of highlighted some of the issues with this particular build. It does require the deck to get ahead and stay ahead. So, still defend that one lane keep, but obviously one laners can be risky from time to time. So, especially even in a bird deck. So, on to the next match. Okay, we're back for match number 2 here. We'll be on the play. Lander. His hand's fine. Question is, what do we put back? I'll put back one of the lava spikes. Back lava spike. kind of counting on Goblin Guy here to be able to at least do 4 damage. Once again, Burn's best openers involve 1-drops of the creature variety. It's Merfolk, it might be a little bit trickier. Sure. Might have considered having a force of negation there. And F6 through my turn like a champ. Are still real adept, sure. Switch island here before. And I guess we just take a lava spike, right? So you're risking them drawing a land here, but at this point I think we just want to trade off the Goblin Guy to keep the pressure off the board and hope we can kill them before they recover here. Basically, I have 2 to 3 turns to draw enough burn spells to kill them. Yep. I could easily present lethal from here. Oh, here's hoping we don't have force of negation. I've been playing it like they had the whole game, so I'm not shocked. So 3, 6, 9. 1 more doesn't do it. Alright, so now we're in the awkward situation where we have these blue counter spells against an opponent with a blue deck, but we also know they play Ether Vial. So let's look at cards we actually want to board out. 4 copies of Eidolon. I always want to board out let's see. Where folks is. Okay, so they're playing Chalice in their. He or she was playing Chalice previously in their variant. Does that change how I want to sideboard? Boarded out those. Not a whole lot of life gain going on here. So maybe bring out the Skull Cracks. Seems like a random number of things, but I'm going to bring in these and bring in some number of the smashes just because previous version of their list had Chalice of the Void, and if we want our counter spells to be reasonable, Smash to Smithereens is a reasonable inclusion. Other than that, you're bringing in your Searing Bloods and your additional Lavamancer to counteract their creatures, and then Eidolon is just generally terrible in matchups in which they have Ether Vial or multiple Ether Vials. Controlling hand, sure, but I think the addition of 2 Searing effects and a Mystical Dispute, I think I'm inclined to keep this hand. That was just annoying enough to counter. I think your opponent's still stunned the burn deck was playing Mystical Dispute. I think we might actually have to sandbag this land, which is mildly annoying, but wow. Okay. Yep. Hopefully we draw another land here. So reveal the Lord of the Lands. Ironically, our choice to play islands here is punishing. Does deprive change how we play the game? Not really. Still think we want smashes in the deck because there's a decent chance they have Ether Vials in their deck, and possibly, again, this version has previously played Chalice. But that list is over a month old, so remains to be seen. I mean, this is a hand that could win the game. We really didn't need to draw another land. Getting the Spreading Seas next turn will definitely suck. Not gonna lie there. Chalice 1/1, yeah. Figured they might have that type of nonsense in their deck. One of Cavern of Souls, sure. Yeah, I'm very well aware I'm wasting a lightning bolt there. All right. Good bit of our hand locked down by Chalice. And Chalice has got us. So, on to the next match. So if I critically look at the deck currently, with the blue splash as opposed to traditional Boros or Mono Red or the Cuddle version, the flaw, obviously the Island Walk got us that one game, but the issues that have been getting us are more things not related to particular splash, like the chalices there that we knew from previous deck lists that our opponent might be up to. We brought in the smashes to compensate. Against the Ponza matchup, once again, I think it was really game 3 keeping a one-lander and not finding another land. I mean, I still think the hands we kept were perfectly keepable, but I don't know that so we're on the draw. Obviously 4 lands. If this were 6 lands, I would snap this off. So is this a high enough potential hand that would be worth keeping a 4-lander? I think on the play the answer is yes. On the draw, that answer is a little less clear. I think we're going to keep, but once again, no, we're immediately going to get impositioned. And regret life's decisions. We're giving away a bit of information, but I think as a burn deck, information can be a little overrated because sometimes you just gotta jam. Just attacking here because window for our creatures to do damage is going to be rapidly closing. Again, shouldn't really be bottoming spells there, but our window for our creatures to do damage has kind of closed, especially with the second Tarmogoyf coming up here. Once again, no reasonable way here that we probably close out this game in time. Yep. Just dead next turn regardless, so. We kept an awkward hand, but once again, if that were a 6, I would have kept that. So, against certain decks, Swiftspear, Opt is enough to punish them. So decks like Blue-White Control, decks like Patron, those are certainly decks that could punish what our opponent was doing. So, now we get to the odd part where I have nothing to bring in against Jund. Is there anything I actively want to board out? Would love to board out the Blazes and the Grim Lavamancer. But Blaze at least has targets in the form of Ooze, potentially Bob, Blood Buried Elf, so at least has targets it can hit. I think this might just be a click submit and hope it's good enough kind of hand. Like, without Path to Exile or anything, there's really nothing in our sideboard we want. Once again, problematic 4-lander. Like, mulliganing against a discard spell deck is bad, so here we are. Plague Engineer. Alright, that's a thing. Discard spell? Yep. Bottom monster, Swiftspear. Yeah. I got nothing, quite literally. So no way our opponent exposes that, so may as well just bolt their face. Oh. Okay. I see. Okay. Magic? Yeah, click submit. And it's reasonable until we get Inquisitioned. Inquisition. Yep, obviously have a removal spell here. Get a trigger. Liana. Not surprising. Tarmogoyf. So, I mean, I guess we Eidolon, force them to do the stuff. And now we're going to get Lilianid. Okay. Point life gain here doesn't matter at the moment. Tarmogoyf is a big boy. Yep. It's going to be hard to be a second use. Sure, but in the end, doesn't matter because we're just dead to a news activation. So, taking a look at that one, what would Boros represent over the list that we were just playing? Path to Exile comes to mind. But not really a whole lot other than that. Like, our hand game 3 was a really, really good burn hand. Creature into Eidolon. Our opponent had removal spell into Tarmogoyf into Liliana. So, as much as I want to get the takeaway of, Boros would have been better here because we would potentially had Path or this, that, or the other thing, I think the reason is, yeah, we had no sideboard cards in that matchup per se. But I think part of it was obviously my lose keep in game 1. And then part of it was in game 3, our opponent's best draw against our best draw. They were on the play, we were on the draw. Jund is a more powerful card for card deck than ours is. So something to keep in mind, in the abstract, does appear we were missing Path to Exile or Roast or anything to deal with Tarmogoyf. But the reality is, how many Path to Exiles are you packing in your Boros sideboard? Maybe 2, maybe 3, possibly even 4. Just, game 1, once again, kept a loose hand. that was a 6 I would have kept, as I explained why my same thing in game 2. We got lucky they got stuck on 1 land. Then game 3, their nut draw basically meant our nut draw and we lost. So not much more to say on to the next match. Back for match number 4 here. Play. Obviously, double 1 drop. A couple other spells is usually a pretty good keep. Burn Mirror would be appropriate, I guess. Yep. Goblins? Feels like goblins. Yep, I'm feeling like I'm going to want to see everybody in this matchup. Definitely feels like goblins. So our opponent might be in a difficult situation where they have to play either a Blood Crypt, untapped, or a Bloodstained Mire, at which point they're just dead. Nope, they have Anti-Subble. Okay. Missions Expert. It was fun while it lasted. Alright, so sideboarding against goblins. There. So obviously they're the go bigger version of Gobos. Could potentially bring in Dragon's Claw. Ancestry. So I think in this matchup we want to bring in these guys. Lava Man, Smashes. Again, we're at Eidolon. And then we've got a copy of Skullcrack. What does this hand do? 2 mulligans. 2 spells we can cast. I think this hand's just a mulligan. The ops back. Okay. It's really hard to play control against this particular style of deck. But cards we currently have. Oh, so annoying. Awkward. We'll get a ringleader. Lieutenant is like the last card I want to see out of their deck. Fortunately, there's a trigger involved. Yep. Chieftain and Matron. Lieutenant can come down and gain them 3 life. Yep. I guess gain them 2 life. Sacrifice a goblin. Great. Force them to decide how many goblins they want to sack here. Hopefully they don't have another one. And yep. Okay, so I'm dead. Cool. I'm gonna bring the full skull crack back in. Yeah. Should not bring the skull crack back in. Really kind of hard to time that against an opponent who knows how to play their actual Sling Gang Lieutenant. It's fine. Tiny bit awkward, but fine. Just awkward in terms of these two don't target creatures. Cavern, sure. Automatically punished by our decision. Let's get an efficiency. Actually, just try a pure. Right. Hopefully they don't have Sling Gang Commander. Don't care about Pile Driver. Not going to play Blood because they could potentially have some way to stop that. So, got our first win here. Once again, what does Boros offer that this version of the deck doesn't? So Boros would offer Core Firewalker, which could potentially be relevant. Lavamancer and Blood performed decently. Smash was potentially okay if they ever presented an Ether Vial. Yeah, I mean, not really much to say about the differences in versions other than potentially would have had Path to Exile, but Path to Exile kind of accelerates them. So, interesting, but ultimately, I don't think the versions of Burn made a huge difference in this matchup either. Anyways, on to the final match. So we're here for the 5th and final match here in this league. Pretty good burn hand, but on the draw, obviously your success goes downhill. Goblin Guide here, hopefully they present a Searing Blaze target, or these land sequencing get a little bit awkward to maximize Blaze, if it's even good in the matchup. Which obviously against the majority of Modern, and there presents some type of Blaze target in the first couple of turns. Burn Mirror. Alright. Let's get rid of the critics, sure. This is the one matchup where not having the white cards is definitely a downside. But then again, if we were playing mono red as well, it would be worse. So Boros Charm, sure. Getting blazed here, most likely. Yep. 1 to 12. Let's get a Riftbolt on top of our deck. A little too hasty to get rid of that there, but idle on. Suspend the Riftbolt here. Could suspend both Riftbolts theoretically. Alright, so what is the proper sequencing here? So I could die if I don't kill this Eidolon this turn. But if they cast one spell in this turn sequence that is not Lightning Helix, they could just be dead on my next turn. I would take 8 to do so. Is that reasonable? I don't think so. Can't afford to take this 2 damage. So skewer. Am I dead? Charm into 2 1-mana burn spells. I mean, there's certainly some combination of. Yep, that probably makes it much more likely that I die. Yep. And lightning looks top it all up. Alright. So, what have I got in this matchup? I got counter spells. Obviously don't like Eidolon here. Grim isn't great. So, obviously this has been a less than stellar league for Mystical Dispute or any type of counter spells, really. Like, we played against a lot of really close matchups. We played against Goblins, played against Jun, played against Ponza, played against a whole lot of different things. So again, these low land count draws have been like the bane of my existence, these leagues. It's a very close hand, but I think we have to keep it. It's got a lot of tools we want in the matchup. Alright. I hate taking the damage here, but I need to be able to unlock Opt. So obviously Grim is not good in this matchup, but I think it's better than having a copy of Eidolon potentially. So our next turn might be something as simple as Opt into Skewer if we're lucky. That is apparently land light. Okay. We're handing our opponent lands left and right, and we're going to fall behind on mana. Should have put a stop during my upkeep and opted away that opt, but I think in the end already played Jun, Merfolk, Goblin, Ponza, this league. Yep. Alright. Well, GG's. I'm too far behind this one. So, We'll be back in a second with the wrap up. So I think my takeaway from this is, in the current format, I don't think this particular style of burn is in the best place. I think that I think this build has merit, but as we were kind of going through the various matchups, there wasn't a single matchup in this league that we saw that we wanted the blue splash. So what would Mystical Dispute, Mana Leak, Ceremonious Rejection, what style of meta are those good in? I mean, obviously we just saw the meta with the Oko decks that it's good in, with a lot of blue mid-range, a lot of E-Tron, brought in Dispute to some decent effect against Amulet Titan when they weren't expecting it, obviously. So I think the meta that Mystical Dispute and such are good against are kind of the more mid-range clunky decks and E-Tron. So decks that you're already decent against potentially, but might struggle against their life gain spells, might struggle against an early resolved Primeval Titan, a early resolve Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, all those kind of cards. I think a meta in which the red mirrors, as our last opponent was just saying, a meta in which burn is prevalent, a meta in which other tribal decks are prevalent for right now. I don't think this is the version we want to be looking at in burn, which when I went in this league, I kind of figured honestly it was going to be poorly positioned, but I did want to at least do my due diligence and see how it fared out. But obviously it didn't go well, but I was kind of expecting that, honestly, at least in terms of the disputes not being good. I was expecting potentially we could run into an E-Tron deck and Ceremonious Rejection would be fine. I think our hedges with the Grimlothamancers and the Searing Bloods were fine. I think leaving a couple smashes in your deck, because there are incidental artifacts we care about, from Tron, E-Tron, from, decks with Ether Vial, especially if they're bringing in things like Dragon's Claw to counter burn. But I think leaving a couple smashes in the sideboard are fine. I just don't know that this blue splash is something that's worth exploring right now. I think if you wanted to go with a more blue splash, I think going back to the 12 bolt, 16 bolt, whatever they called it, it was like Delver, Snapcaster Mage, Mana Leak, that kind of stuff. The more kind of tempo Delver, blue-red burn deck, I think that deck could certainly be worth exploring in the new format. But then again, that deck is predicated a little bit more on disruption. So I would go back and look at Jeff Hoagland's build of the deck, kind of update from there. Something like Brazen Borrower could be included in that list now. I'm pretty sure Brazen Borrower is a wizard, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of things you could look at. If you were interested in this style of deck, I would think that would be a better thing to explore right now than actual burn with a little bit of counterspell magic. This version was very interesting and cute whenever you're playing 1 mana counter spells, basically. So whenever Ceremonious Rejection and Mystical Dispute's actually a 1 mana counter, I think this version's good. I don't think Burn's too interested in playing 2 and 3 mana counter spells. So keep this idea in the back burner. We'll explore it some other time once the format settles down. Maybe we start seeing things like the Amulet Field deck come back. Start seeing things like E-Tron come back in force. Maybe even Blue-White Control, as that's a matchup that's gotten harder over time. I think exploring that then would be interesting, but for right now, I would kind of set this version to the side. It's just not well positioned. So that's it. We'll be back a little bit later this week, maybe with another Boros Burn League, but I will be having some more chunky red hopefully this evening. This has been John for MTG Nexus, and shout out to our last round opponent. Thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you all later.